Hello, this is Julie Bennett Hume. Welcome to this evening's River City Chautauqua and Happy Earth Day 2021. We have a special show tonight. We're going to be listening to some music by local musician Scott Repko and talking with Scott just a little bit. And we have a guest this evening, Jill Westra, who is going to be talking to us about rivers. And Jill, I'm going to hand this over to you.
Thanks, Julie. It's great to be here tonight. We're going to have a good time discussing the environment, being Earth Day and all. We're going to take an in-depth look at rivers, as you mentioned. And as you know, rivers bring us so much more than just a water source. We might examine some of those really interesting aspects with someone who's a river expert, my friend Steve Schnarr from Missouri River Relief. And I'm really excited to hear some Scott Rabko, too. So let's jump on in the water here, and happy Earth Day. Earth Day focuses on ways to create a healthier environment by protecting the planet and its resources. In April 1970, 20 million Americans participated in the first Earth Day, as a perfect storm of environmental disasters finally touched a nerve. Chronic air pollution, the effects of DDT on birds and other wildlife, a massive oil spill off of Santa Barbara, and the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland catching on fire, just to mention a few. Congress and President Nixon responded by enacting a host of new laws, including the Clean Water Act, the Occupational Safety and Health Act, and the Endangered Species Act. They also strengthened the Clean Air Act and established the Environmental Protection Agency. Today, it is the largest secular observance in the world, with over 1 billion people taking part each year, and the theme for this year is Restoring Our Earth. The concept of celebrating this internationally recognized day gives us the time to deliberately think about the planet and our roles within the cycle of life. As I sat down to reflect on what would be a worthwhile topic to dig into for this edition of River City Chautauqua, I struggled to focus on one particular aspect of the environment to explore in less than an hour. Earth Day has given us the space to talk about difficult things such as consumerism, environmental racism, environmental justice, and climate change, just to name a few. But I kept coming back to this year's theme, restoring the Earth. I thought back to how the Cuyahoga River caught fire and what that symbolized. It did prove to be the last such incident, as images of the burning river helped spark a nationwide awakening to the plight of our rivers. That image was strong enough to give birth to the EPA and the Clean Water Act of 1972. I realized that unlike oceans or lakes or mountains, which many global citizens may go their entire lives without seeing or connecting to, everyone lives in a river basin or watershed, even if you don't live near the water itself. The land that we live on eventually drains to a river or estuary or lake somewhere, and our actions on that land affect water quality and quantity for everyone downstream. You can think of a river basin like a bathtub that catches all the water that falls within its sides and then sends it all to a central river or out to an estuary or the sea. So, rivers belong to us all, and thus watershed health is important to everyone. No wonder the visual of the burning Cuyahoga triggered such a movement back in the 70s. I like to imagine a nationwide epiphany of, well, I can't let that happen to my river, resonating across the country back then. After all, whether the residents of every river basin on Earth are aware of it or not, rivers play a huge part in how our culture forms. There's actually an eco-social term called river culture, which not only refers to the influence of biological features, but also the aspect of learning from the river and understanding the importance of rivers in the development of ancient civilizations, from the Ganges to the Nile to the Amazon and the Mississippi. Entire legal regimes and political boundaries have grown up around them. Rivers are about transportation, fishing, agriculture, industry, recreation, and the environment. So, with this in mind, I asked a regional expert on rivers to join us for a chat about a group of local folks who are truly zeroed in on river health. I'm excited to hear about some of the initiatives offered to those in the area who want to get involved in river stewardship, and I'm also keen on talking about some of the cultural value that we can get out of these water bodies by ensuring their protection and restoration. Tonight, my very special guest is Steve Schnarr. the executive director of a Missouri-based nonprofit called Missouri River Relief. Their focus is on connecting people through experiences and action. Welcome, Steve, and happy Earth Day, and happy 20th anniversary of Missouri River Relief.
Oh, it's so cool to be on River City Chautauqua. It's awesome in Kansas City.
Now, we're so glad you're here, but I want to put you in the hot seat and see if you, our special guest, was paying attention at the top of the episode.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Could you tell me what is the theme of Earth Day 2021?
I think it is Restore the Earth.
Correct. Ding, 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 ding.
That's good. That's good.
Listen, I really wanted you here tonight because when I think of the theme Restore the Earth for Earth Day 2021, I couldn't think of a better visual than what you do, bringing people together on the river, acquainting them with their environment, and then helping restore it, helping clean it up, helping take away the negative and leaving the positive.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's get this Chautauqua rolling. I'm really excited to hear all about Missouri River Relief, who you are, what you do. And I know you're more than just cleanups, so tell us about it.
Well, we are based in Columbia, Missouri, but we work all along the Missouri River, really from Omaha to St. Louis, where the Missouri enters the Mississippi, or as we like to say, where the Mississippi enters the Missouri River, which goes all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. But that's another argument for another episode of River City Chautauqua.
We love that, though. That's a great topic. Let's bring it up later sometime.
Yeah. We'll get the Mississippi River people over here and have a chat. So this is actually our 20th year. Later this year is going to be the 20th anniversary of the first river cleanup that we did. So that was back in 2001. And I lived in the area down by the Missouri River. So I just showed up as a volunteer to the first Missouri River Relief cleanup and didn't know what was going on, like what was going on behind the scenes. And later found out that it was a friend of mine, Jim Karpowitz, that had been kind of the instigator of this river cleanup.
I know that unusual suspect.
Do you know that guy? Yeah,
I do.
I know that you know that guy.
Fantastic videographer.
He is. Amongst other things, he's kind of an amazing soul, and someone should do a movie about that guy, honestly. But one of the cool things that he started was Missouri River Relief and helped bring together a bunch of people from, state government and federal government agencies with river rats, people that love the Missouri River and wanted to get together and engage a bunch of people in cleaning it up. So we've always been a little grassrootsy.
Okay, hey, right there, you said it, river rats, right? And I hear river culture, and it really doesn't surprise me to hear that would have been the demographic of folks that would have kicked this all off.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, what is it, Steve, about river folk? I mean, I grew up on the Missouri River, and I can't quite put my finger on it, but I know it's there. There's something in... I don't want to say something in the water because that's very cliche, but there is something about the people on the river that is special, and maybe you've got more insight than I do, but it's there, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, all that water, it makes you feel kind of small, but then it makes you feel powerful when you're next to it, And I think that people that really learn to tap into that, and people that start to learn the lessons of the river and want to share that with other people, like you just keep running into that on the river. So it's been exciting to watch this thing grow from me just showing up and actually showing up too late and missing the boat and having to clean up an old dump to before I knew it, they stuck me in a staff position.
Oh, wow. Thrown into the deep end of the river, so to speak.
Actually.
Okay, so we understand that you're based in Columbia, but you operate all up and down the Missouri River. And of course, as we know here on River City Chautauqua, that includes Kansas City, which is kind of a big deal.
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, I think a lot of Kansas Cityans they don't think of themselves as a river city, but they have several big rivers, including the longest river in North America that runs right through the middle.
Correct.
And all of the history of Kansas City ties back to the river.
Absolutely. That's a very important aspect geographically, commercially, environmentally, culturally. I'd love to hear about some of the stuff you've gotten to up in these parts.
We've done a lot of work in the Kansas City area, and there's other groups, amazing groups, like Healthy Rivers Partnership, Friends of the Caw, Heartland Conservation Alliance, like super great groups that are, doing this work in Kansas City. And we love to come and help them out.
We've got a couple rivers here to worry about.
In fact, just the last weekend in March was the Project Blue River Rescue, which is always a gigantic cleanup on the Blue River. Amazing people that put that on.
I would really like to know, what does a river cleanup look like? If someone were to get involved with Missouri River Relief, how would it go off? What would it look like?
Yeah. For 20 years, we've had typical river cleanups. And then last year, we pretty much had to totally change how we do river cleanups.
Sure, pandemic and all.
And that's going to still be going on for a little while. But the normal model that we've done is at 9 o'clock on a Saturday, several hundred people will show up to a boat ramp somewhere, and we've got boats, and we request help from the Department of Conservation and the Fish and Wildlife Service, different agencies to come and bring their boats, help haul volunteers out to different stretches along the river. And we'll usually in a morning like that, we'll cover about 10 miles of river. And people just get out, and most of what we're cleaning up is not in the river. The river's muddy, it's turbid, it's got current. Like, we're not in the river.
Okay.
We're up in the forest and walking along the banks, picking up stuff that high water and floods have brought in, and dropped.
Sandbars? Do you drop people off on sandbars and tell them to go for it? Or
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. We end up finding those spots where it really collects, and we'll make sure that we get a lot of people there to help clean it up. And then everybody comes back for lunch. We leave all the trash in giant piles on the bank and spend the afternoon hauling it all back in. So there's kind of like a lot of different places people can plug in on an event like that.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of August this year, and we're still kind of nailing down some of the dates, but we will have a series of days in the Kansas City area where we'll be looking for volunteers to work on the river. And it's probably going to be some version of this sort of COVID model that we've been doing with smaller groups for a little bit longer period of time, maybe bringing our lunch with us.
So tell us about that. Tell us a little bit about what's happening in August exactly, and what it's called and what the event looks like.
It's a big muddy clean sweep. It's going to be a rolling series of river cleanups. We're starting in Kansas City in late August. I think August 21st, possibly. Well, we're going to have a series of cleanups with small groups, but we're looking for groups. We would love, a bunch of different diverse kinds of youth groups or community groups here in Kansas City that we could work with. And we're probably going to do 3 or 4 days of cleanups as we sort of work our way down the river through Kansas City. But then for the next 2 months, we're just going to keep working down the river, taking occasional breaks, but camping out a lot and working our way down to Columbia, picking up trash. Every time we've done something like this, and this is our 3rd clean sweep, there's always people that end up joining and just tag along that are often like the best help of all. And they just see what's going on. They love it. And they just hop right in.
And is this an event that you would sign up for and pay to attend, and then the funds go to the organization, or what's the catch?
No, we're hoping to raise the money to make this happen. But everything we do is always kind of a constant flow of money. We're constantly trying to raise corporate sponsorships or grants. We get some government money, a lot of individual and family donations to make this thing go. But every year's, at the beginning of the year, we don't know where all the money's going to come from. We just know that we're going to raise it.
Well, tell me about some of the other non-cleanup ideas or initiatives that Missouri River Relief can offer. So, aside from planning a cleanup for your office group or your church group or your neighborhood group, and getting everybody out on a boat and collecting trash and making sure it gets disposed of properly. What other offerings does your organization have on the menu?
Well, our mission really is all about connecting people to the Missouri River through action and experience, really. And we've just sort of thought about what are the different ways and the different levels and different audiences and communities we can touch and connect to and bring them to the river. And like right off the bat, we started working with education. We have an amazing education team. It's our director, Kristen Schulte, and right now we have an AmeriCorps member who works with Kristen. And so the two of them have a great committee of volunteers that works on developing education projects. You know, one of the biggest things that we do, and we're not back to doing it yet, maybe this fall, but certainly next spring, is getting every fourth grader in the Columbia Public School District on the river in boats, which is, 1,500 kids. And it's a big project,
That's a tall order.
That way we can really cut across the whole community, and give everyone the same experience, which is something most of them never get, So Kristen's come up with a lot of great projects during the pandemic. And you can access a lot of them on our website, riverleaf.org. So those, a lot of that is online projects that you and your family and kids can do, or community groups in your own neighborhoods or your local parks or something like that. But you don't even have to have access to parks. Wherever you live is where you live, and it needs to be taken care of.
Could you tell us a little bit about what you've recently gotten up to with the Shawnee Mission School District, which is, right here in Kansas City? And
getting kids out in boats is one thing. Another really great audience is teachers, because they're teaching dozens or hundreds of kids. And there's so many ways that the Missouri River can just be the subject matter that ties into things that teachers are already teaching. And there's a lot of history there. There's a lot of science that can be taught about the river, biology, engineering, science.
Sure.
There's just a lot. I mean, everything connected to Earth Day, right? All these things. The river can be an example of that. So yeah, this is a really cool program. The Shawnee Mission had an extra program that teachers could go through to learn some units that they could bring back to their classroom that relate to the stuff they're already teaching. And so they had this unit about water quality. So we're like the field trip for the teachers. We meet them at Caw Point Park, which is where the Kansas River comes into the Missouri River. A really cool place.
Yeah.
Amazing view of downtown Kansas City from there. They hop in boats, and Kristen, our education director, just has like several lesson plans that she uses with students that she just teaches to the teachers, and then also integrates some of the things that they're already learning, and using the Missouri River. It just sort of wakes things up where that you can see that passion build in the teachers, like just during the day.
Teaching the teacher.
Yeah. It's like the core of our education program is place-based education, which is you're learning about this stuff already. Let's learn about the thing that's happening here where you live. How does the place you live connect to what you're learning about?
Hope the levee in Shreveport does what it's supposed to do, 'cause the rain keeps coming. Yeah, the rain keeps coming. I must have called you 99 times, but I couldn't get through. Yeah, the rain keeps coming. 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 Nothing's ever for certain until the levee breaks down. The water comes in and the river takes the town.
And we just heard a little bit of the Wood Brothers, too. That's The River Takes the Town. All right, Steve, we're both music fans. I know that. I want to bring a musical twist into it. Tell me what your favorite river song is.
I mean, honestly, like a lot of the musical genres in the world have built up around rivers. It just works, right? But I don't know. I'm kind of a big John Hartford fan, and
Brilliant. Perfect choice. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like a real river guy, and he has just scads of awesome river songs.
That's putting it lightly.
There's the one called Where Does the Old Time Riverman Go? That I love that song by John Hartford. It gets me right in the gut.
That's a great one. I like Only a River by Bob Weir.
Oh, yeah, great.
Yeah, river songs are the best. There's an entire nonprofit dedicated to the preservation of the Missouri River and its music called Missouri River Cultural Conservancy. And that's another interview for another day. Wonderful crowd of people. But anyway, let's get back to Missouri River Relief. And we're talking about your mission, which is engaging individuals and communities along the Missouri River in the exploration, enjoyment, restoration, and care of the river through education, stewardship, and recreation. Let's hear a little bit about the recreation part of it.
We just last year took over the MR 340 canoe kayak race, which is a big deal. A canoe kayak race from Kansas City to St. Charles, near St. Louis.
That's across the entire state. That's a long way to paddle.
Super crazy cool, yeah.
How many miles exactly, Steve?
340.
340. Funny that name.
And actually, I think it's sort of rounded up, but whatever. We're not going to go there.
Yeah, we won't split hairs on the
turn off your GPS units. It's 340. And that race was started 16 years ago by Scott Mansker, a Kansan himself, who really had no idea if this was something that was possible or if anybody would be interested or not. And just
it's a great idea. I mean, It makes sense to go straight across the state.
So let's see, this year it's July 21st through 23rd. It takes almost 4 days for the slowest people. The quickest people finish in, I think the record is a little less than 34 hours, which is mind blowing. Anyway, so we're still working with all of the amazing volunteers and the staff that's been running the race, but we've just turned it into a fundraiser for River Relief.
What's your involvement specifically?
Yeah. Well, the same organizer, Scott Mansker, he's the race director still. So he's doing everything pretty much that he did last year. Each year we'll take on more roles and kind of start taking a lot of the heavy lifting out of his hands. Kind of a process. We're giving ourselves 3 years to do that. It's a little experimental, but part of it is changing part of the race registration into a donation. I mean, really the thing that gets us is like how it just ties into our mission. It's just perfect. The connection that's created between all of these people participating, hundreds of people paddling together down the river.
Or spectating.
For sure. Kansas City is kind of a really great place to watch. I mean, it's the place to watch the start of the race, right? Berkeley Riverfront Park is probably the best because by the time they get there, which is only, 2 miles maybe from the race start, they've already started to kind of spread out so you can see the diversity of boats.
What would somebody that would actually show up to Berkeley Riverfront Park, what would they be able to witness?
I was definitely new to the paddle racing scene when I first started getting involved in the 340 about 12 years ago. And I was helping on a safety boat. But I think most people would be like me. I'd never seen skinny canoe things that it's like, is that a canoe? Is that a kayak? What is that? Where there's like 5 people in them and their butts barely fit. They are just hauling butt down the river and they're going to do that, for 340 miles. That
sounds like a pretty expensive rig, or is that something?
Some of them are really expensive, right? Okay. And then other people have their grandpa's aluminum boat, and a couple of seat cushions, a cooler, and occasionally a dog. And for them, it's super hard, right? And it becomes this 4-day journey, and it can be life-changing.
Wow.
If they're trying to win the race, they're not even stopping. If they're like in the running for one of the first slots, they will pull in and their ground crew will throw them a bag of supplies and they'll throw like their trash in a bag back and just keep going. Other people, like one guy will like sleep and the other person will paddle, or they pull over on the side and just collapse into the mud, like whatever, or on the pavement.
I see that. I could see that happening. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Other people have RVs, follow them along, and their family or their friends are like set up camp for them or whatever. People actually will leave and go to hotels, believe it or not.
I know I know quite a few people who really enjoy this event every year, but I love the way that there's such a broad spectrum of participants, as you're saying. There's the real racers, there's the real paddlers, and then there's the weekend warriors that just want to be involved in something fun. And I mean, it makes a great statement that this year, we're benefiting Missouri River Relief by having the event. I love hearing that. Well, so tell me about some of your educational initiatives for non-school children.
Yeah, well, we do have something called the Big Money Speaker Series, which happens every month. And at least for the next several months, we'll be doing this on Zoom. So it doesn't matter where you live, you can tune in.
If somebody from anywhere in this listening area would want to get involved, what would they do?
Yeah, sure. Well, the website is bigmoneyspeakers.org. And basically the second Tuesday of every month, we have a different presenter talk about some aspect of the Missouri River or something that ties back to the Missouri River, whether that be history or ecology, whatever. I mean, all kinds of stuff. Engineering, where we get our drinking water, which for Kansas City is predominantly the Missouri River. Every month we'll have a new presentation, bigmoneyspeakers.org. Pre-pandemic, there were other organizations statewide that were hosting these live too. And so Healthy Rivers Partnership in Kansas City is one of those organizations. And they actually hosted a Kansas City monthly Big Money Speakers that went on every month too. So hopefully that'll come back.
Would that information be available on the website that you just mentioned?
Yeah. We started doing it, I think 11 years ago. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, we'll probably have like a year's worth of talks and then we'll be done, right? And we're still doing it.
But in the meantime, it sounds like if you know how to operate the Zoom, then you could still avail of some of these speaker events once a month. Would that be correct?
And those have all also been recorded. So they're on YouTube as well.
Okay.
So you can look at the archives on the Big Money Speakers website and see some of the past presentations we've had.
It's just really helpful that you're giving us these resources because, I know as somebody who's always looking for material to either of course, this is due to being in the environmental and sustainability game, but I'm always looking for resources that we can share and that, help educate either coworkers or small groups, or if you're a teacher and you're doing an environmental stewardship unit in one of your classes, these are some really good, free, available public resources that are out there. And I just think it's very valuable to let everybody know about that.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Jill, for sure. And in addition to the Big Money Speaker Series, we're continuously adding stuff to the River Relief website. So there are lots of resources on the resources tab on our website, whether they're educational stuff for kids, activities for people to do, or we have one site that's just called Missouri River Bookshelf, and it's a list of like 30 of our favorite Missouri River books,
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, okay. And so while we're on that topic of education, I participated in a wonderful event this year with Missouri River Relief, and it was the film festival. I would love it if you could talk a little bit about this very special film festival that was put on like no other normal year, obviously due to the pandemic circumstances. But why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, sure. Well, that's the Wild and Scenic Film Festival, and it's actually originates in Nevada City, California. An organization called South Yuba River Citizens League puts this on every year. And they have 3 days of films, and they're predominantly environmental films or outdoor adventure films. But, the real theme is like people taking action in their own communities to change things. And it's a lot of really inspiring stories.
Restoring the earth.
Restoring the earth. Yes. Yeah. And, another organization that does is Friends of the Caw. So they also did the same thing this spring. And I think they might even usually have multiple days, but we basically pick 2 to 3 hours of films and usually get a local one, to mix in with it. We usually have music, and it's actually quite an event, but this year it was all online. So we did have an online auction, which was really fun. Lots of local art and experiences that people could tap into.
And it all benefited Missouri River Relief?
Yeah, it's a benefit for River Relief. And, this year we sold as many tickets as we would for the live one, but each one of those tickets was probably more than one person. It actually really helped, I think, for us to reach a lot of people. And hopefully for people to feel like part of another community, while they're sitting in their living room watching.
I got a lot of mileage out of that. Myself and my best friend and my daughter sat down on the couch and we had dinner and we watched it. We watched the entire film festival. And what I really liked was the interface that you used in order to, quote unquote, project the films, such that, it was there on your screen and you could broadcast it onto your television. There was a chat option. You could chat with the other viewers. I mean, to be honest, I thought it was as good, if not better, than being in person, and I really enjoyed not having to leave my house.
So that was definitely one of the benefits of it. It was really, I was very grateful that the Wild and Scenic Film Festival had come up with the platform that was really relatively easy for us to use to connect with everyone. We got a few curmudgeonly phone calls,
Of course you did.
What is this virtual what?
It wouldn't be a nonprofit without that element, Steve. No, I really enjoyed the selection of films. I liked that it tapped into environmental justice topics. It tapped into outdoors sports topics. There was a lot of ecology, of course, as you would expect. My favorite film on the event was the Asian carp in the Missouri River.
Yeah, right. Sure. So that film was our local one, and actually a local professor from the University of Missouri reached out to us. And we've worked with Mark Morgan for years. He's been trying to come up with markets and outreach techniques to boost the market for invasive carp species that are in the Missouri and Mississippi River. So those are mainly the silver and bighead carp.
There's so many. I didn't realize there were so much.
In some places, it's 80% of the biomass of the fish that live in the river. And that's particularly the Mississippi and Illinois, but there's a lot of them in the Missouri River too. But coming up for markets for them, even though they're a perfectly edible fish, they kind of have a bad reputation, right?
We don't think of them as an edible fish for some reason.
In America, the rest of the world does. Carp is like the most eaten fish for, non-coastal people in the world. They're an ecological problem here. So like Mark's idea is that if we could create markets, where people could be harvesting these fish from our rivers, it would lower the pressure that those fish are causing on all the other fish in the rivers. And we're also like helping, people get jobs, local fishermen for one thing on this end of the spectrum. But he's also found, he specifically was working with people in Haiti who needed, protein sources that were shippable and movable, storable, and could be used in a variety of ways. And like they've come up with this way to process carp. They don't have to send it, refrigerated and frozen. They dehydrate it, and people are actually using it in Haiti for distributing food to places that are either hit by disasters or just need that extra protein,
Right, where they may not have refrigeration available at their fingertips and,
or unreliable electricity or whatever,
Right.
So
whoever thought that, our Missouri River carp would end up going to Haiti?
Yeah, right.
It's so far out there, and it was just a great realization and a perfect example of sustainable relationship between countries when one has a surplus of something and the other has not enough.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So, okay, Mr. Executive Director, let's talk logistics here. Specifically, how in the world do you keep this entity, this organization, this nonprofit running? Where is the labor coming from?
Yeah, it's magic, pretty much.
It's the
So,
river. It has to be magic.
well, so back at the first river cleanup that Missouri River Relief did in 20 years ago, they held that cleanup and really had no idea how many people were going to come. It ended up being like 400 people. There was just this pent up energy, right? And
wow.
Some of those people are still volunteering with River Relief to this day. And really, there's this continuously evolving kind of community that we call the River Relief crew that puts these events on and helps us do it. We've got 4 staff members right now, 4 full-time staff, several part-time, but it's volunteers that actually pull this off. All of these programs on the ground, driving boats, staying late to make sure the last bag of trash gets dealt with, everything, making food for volunteers and the crew and everyone. So yeah, the River Relief crew is an outstanding example of just an evolution of a community that is dedicated to keeping this thing rolling. It's a beautiful thing. I'm lucky to be part of it. We constantly need new people. And so if you've got that kind of quirky river love, looking for your community of people, like we might be your community of people, and you should find out when we're in Kansas City and come help out, volunteer help or donations. Those are all important, super important.
Oh yeah, definitely couldn't do it without volunteers. Hey, heck, this sounds like a community radio station or something.
Yeah, I feel really lucky, all across the state, and Kansas City is no exception. There are wonderful people out there doing great things in their community. And you can open your eyes and ask a few questions, and you're going to find those people, and you can clue in and start helping make stuff happen.
Yeah. Well, I'm just really impressed with your organization and how you bring people together. You generate positive environmental impacts. You draw people down to the river, which is so important to really understand the environment and how it works. And you teach people and you educate them. And you use the river itself in situ as a teaching tool. And I think that's a great way to foster relationships between people and the environment. It's amazing.
I think that the river teaches people who sit down and listen a lot of lessons about life and how to live life for the moment fully, but also in recognition of all the connections you have to other things. Those are lessons the river teaches you. When you sit next to the river and you watch that water go by, it just automatically, it's like a human genetic code almost that just click, click, click. It starts to make us think about what's upstream, what's downstream,
What that the river has taught you would be the one thing that stands out that you would pass along. What's your favorite river lesson?
So whether you're aware of it or not, rivers are connecting you to other people, and stories of the river sort of flow up and down it, and you might hear a story from another community of something that's going on. The trash teaches us that. I mean, when we find a message in a bottle from Fort Morgan, Colorado, and it's like, wait, Fort Morgan, Colorado is connected to the Missouri River? And then you get a map out and it's like, well, sure, man, the North Platte runs through there. Wow, okay.
Is that a true story?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, my favorite river lesson is that you can't put the water back upstream. And to me, it's just a good visual for every action is a choice.
Yeah.
So, meditate on that for a while. We're getting pretty deep and meaningful here, Steve.
Yeah, the river has a lot of profound messages like that. There's one thing that the river teaches you, and it's just flexibility and resilience. One of our mentors, our fleet manager, John Brady, he likes to remind us to think like a willow. You can let the river bend you, you can let it cover you with mud, but you just pop right back up and think about your next path.
Where does an old-time engineer go after he's cooled her down? Gone up the hill to never come back from the quiet side of town. Does a soul live on in the engine's song? while the striker checks the gear. Is he still afloat on an old steamboat after he's gone from here?
As we wrap up tonight's Earth Day edition of River City Chautauqua, I'm thinking about how you can't truly care about what you don't know. I'm really encouraged by groups such as Missouri River Relief who make introductions. They help folks get acquainted with and come to know the river on another level. And that level can range anywhere from academic to spiritual. There's so much more to appreciate than just water flowing from point A to point B. There's history, culture, biodiversity, life, death, music, poetry. And the closer we get to the river, the more we listen, and the more we can learn. I'm grateful to Steve Schnarr for joining us tonight and painting a picture of the many ways that these important connections can be made, which can hopefully result in turning regular people into river people. And that makes them people who care.
Thank you very much.
Show no mercy, keep driving me insane. Oh, my balking muse with the restless Sunday blues, fogging up my window pane. But the wind died down and the sun came out. Clouds hightail away. I'll be damned if it turned into a pretty good day.
We've been listening to Scott Repko and the Rabbits, Pretty Good Day, and we're here talking with Scott Repko. And welcome to our show, Scott.
Well, thanks for having me, Julie.
So, how's life been treating you this past year?
It's kind of isolated.
Uh-huh. Have you been playing music with anybody?
Just via long-distance collaboration, swapping files back and forth and doing all kinds of wild stuff.
Has it been satisfying, or would you rather be in person?
I guess the short answer would be yes. I'd rather be in person, but there's just something about getting this transmission from the other planets, weaving it into the little world in my studio. It's kind of cool.
Well, tell me something you've been working on. Is anything coming out for public consumption?
I'm going to have another album out maybe in the summer, and some of it's kind of experimental.
Well, good. I'm looking forward to hearing something. How long have you lived in KC?
I came here to go to art school many, many moons ago, and then I moved away and lived in Chicago for a while, Austin, Texas, and then came back.
So you lived in some pretty good music cities.
Yeah. In Chicago, there was like actually a real appreciation for country and roots music, surprisingly enough, considering it's a rock town, you know. I got into Townes Van Zandt and Jerry Jeff Walker and Robert Earl Keen, all those guys.
And what did you study at the Art Institute?
Painting.
Oh, okay.
It was through the Art Institute that I got the notion that I could even try to play music, because I had no musical background whatsoever. In a way, you know, I didn't use what I learned in a direct way, but in an indirect way, a lot of the ideas flowed into my music, I think.
I can see that. I think a lot of frustrated novelists that have turned songwriters would tell you the same thing.
I'm a frustrated novelist, too.
Well, speaking of novelists, who are you reading these days?
Well, I guess the last time I was reading a lot, I think I read everything by Hemingway, because I just kind of passed over him, and I kind of got into it.
Ken Burns is coming up with a documentary, I think, that's going to air before long on Hemingway, and I'm really excited to see it. Regardless of what you think of his work, you know, Hemingway's a pretty fascinating person, and I think a documentary on Hemingway will just shed so much light on the 20th century.
I just, I just think of some of his lines, like, instead of going into some kind of symbolism or this long-winded, he would just say, "It rained hard."
I do think that I could see a songwriter liking Hemingway.
Yeah,
but,
to the point, man. Although
yeah,
I failed to do that in my songs many times.
Okay, Scott, let's go ahead and take a break for a minute and listen to a song of yours. What are we listening to here?
This is called Dog in the Backyard.
And when did you write this?
Let's see, that was a couple years ago.
Is it on a CD that you have on Bandcamp?
It's on Bandcamp as a single.
Well, here we have Scott Repko, Dog in the Backyard. Well, we've talked about books a little bit. What are you listening to these days?
I'm starting to get reacquainted with some free jazz from the 60s, which I kind of lost track of. I was really into it when I was in my 20s. And now I'm digging a little deeper into it. Reading about the life of Albert Ayler and listening to his music and just trying to hang in there with it, because it's tough sledding, very apocalyptic sounding music, and the guy wasn't messing around. He had a tough life too, so it's a little depressing at times. Fascinating character.
Can you recommend something for our listeners?
There's a double album, I think it's called Live at the Village. It's like 2 albums combined, and it's amazing. He's got a violin player with him, and his brother's playing trumpet, and but it's not for everybody. It's really out there.
So what bugs you most about the music world?
Well, right now, I'm just so on the fringes of anything, personally. I just sort of do my thing, and I release it, and I hardly have any audience, but they're scattered around. This has something to do with this thing of streaming, streaming music, being on Spotify, for example, and I get these statements, regularly of what I've earned from streaming. Uh-huh. And it's just like shavings of pennies,
Yes.
And so there's that part of it is it disturbs me, because it's like there are people listening. They're out there. Uh-huh. They're in Jakarta. They're in Lincoln, Nebraska. They're in Mexico City. They're everywhere. There's somebody in Lille, France, who loves my whole catalog, apparently. But I don't know I want to meet this person, So the money aspect of it, and just the fact that people are out there, it's very alienating. It's to know that you're reaching people, but you're cut off from it.
Yeah.
And I understand that's why a lot of people love live music. They love performing, because you're just not going to get that kind of connection otherwise. But I have trouble with live music sometimes. I have trouble with going to bars and people who are inconsiderate, who don't give a damn about music. When you have a band, I don't have a band anymore, and that's part of it. When you have a band, if there's any kind of rock element to it, you at least have that weapon against an inattentive audience. You can be confrontational, but if you're just doing a solo acoustic thing, which is all I ever do anymore, if people aren't listening and they're just yapping, I mean, it's hard for me to just put on airs like that. I can't conquer that kind of. It's not like being a prima donna and you need to hear a pin drop, but just people that aren't there for the music and they just yap over it. And why are you even there?
Uh-huh.
And
what gets you out of bed in the morning? What are you excited about?
It really is music, and I have a little studio in my basement and a computer, and I get lost in that world, and I deliberately get lost. I'll make the arrangements for the songs so complicated that I can't think of anything else. I hate to use this word, but it's therapeutic. I don't want it just to be therapy for me, because then it's not really useful as art, but it is as well,
All right. Well, Scott, we've really enjoyed having you here with us tonight on River City Chautauqua. And we're going to go off on a song of yours. Can you tell us a bit about this song?
This is called In Lieu of Flowers. It's as close as I'm going to get to a quarantine song.
Okay. And is this on Bandcamp right now?
Yes.
And most of your catalog, the listeners can get to on Bandcamp. Is that correct?
Everything's available there. It's free to download. You can leave a tip if you want. It's entirely up to you. But yeah.
All right. Well, we've been listening to Scott Repko. Good to talk to you, Scott. Take care.
Thank you, Julie. haunted houses, birds in low places, weeds in the weeds, papers in the wind, perfect defectors, serenading bill collectors. Oh, whatever the wind blew in. Stardust collecting in the corner, shining on neglected guitars. One for the neighbors couldn't hold their liquor. You and me couldn't let go of ours. Picking and kvetching over minor chord progressions. Come on, come on, come on, commiserate with me. Lost in recollection from the heavy ever after. Oh, heartaches departed like the wind through the trees. Over me, exhausted fans, room clearing bands, nullified by lullabies of supply and demand. One for the troubadour, waiting for the meteor, giving up the ghost for a bird in the hand. Bird in the hand. Getting kinda late to be starting up something. She's laughing in her sleep. Well, maybe next time. Down in the basement, there's a nickel in the dryer, rolling round and round, chasing after a dime. Falling behind.
Thank you for listening to this evening's River City Chautauqua. I want to thank our special guests, Jill Westra, Steve Schnarr, and Scott Rapko. Happy Earth Day 2021. You've been listening to River City Chautauqua.